Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Kelly Mitchell. I am the Program Officer of College Access and Success. I have the awesome pleasure of welcoming you all to tonight's session with Jacqueline Salabai. And so just wanted to say hello and thank you all for participating and being here. We understand that you all have a lot of things on your plate, and this is why we have this session available for you all. Just a couple of quick notes, and this will be gone over as well at the end. But please, there will be a survey link sent out, shared with you towards the end of the session. If you all can please complete that survey, that would be great. That not only helps the coaches, but also helps Jacqueline as well as she plans for each session, especially for next semester as well. But we also have our last talking circle for the calendar year, well, for the semester, next in 2 weeks. So November 28th is the last one, and then we'll start up back in the springtime. But information will be shared with you at that time as well. We'll make sure to share that out with all the scholars. But now I'll turn it over to our awesome hosts. I'm pointing this way because I hope I'm pointing the right way.
Like Vanna White.
Yeah, or like I've been flying too much, so that's all I see is people in the airway. Exactly. I'm just playing my
Yeah, all right. Welcome.
Exactly. It made your mark. I'm kidding.
Right.
All right, everyone, have a good night, and I hope you have a great holiday as well, or time off, actually. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Oh, that's funny. All right. Welcome, everyone. I will get straight to introduce myself real quick. My name is Jacqueline Salabai. I am the Navajo. Kia Animeshla Tachini Bashishchin, Fabaha Edishiche, the Twitchini Edishanala. So I am from the Towering House clan, born for Red Rip, running into the Water clan. And my maternal Chase grandfathers are Edgewater, and my paternal grandfathers are Bitterwater. And so I'm originally from the Lower Gracewood area here in Arizona. And I have roughly, I'm guessing, like 15 years experience as a social worker. I've been in the field working with children, youth, and families, and suicide prevention, as well as community-based participatory models. And so I love working with community, love working and advocating for children and families. And so today's presentation, we're going to go into more of mental strength. So I had long discussions with American Indian College Fund, and we talked about these presentations focusing around stress management and also how to create self-care plans. And I know the previous discussions were based around those, and there might have been a variation of how to create a self-care plan. What exactly are stress? What is stress, and how does it impact us? And then last presentation, we went more into detail about, what are the current stressors? What is stressing me out right now? Since it is midterms, how do I deal with this? How do I handle this? And so today we're going to go through mental strength. Let me share my screen. And I always like to do introductions from you all. So if you all would like to come off mute and say your introduction, I always welcome that. I like to preface our meeting by saying that, if we were in person, we would be sitting around in a circle so I could see all of your faces. And I think it just creates a sense of connection when we sit in the circle, um, and as opposed to like sitting in a classroom, right? So if you can come in today and have that mindset and, you know, think that, you know, we're all sitting in a circle, someone sitting here and someone sitting here. Okay, well, we will move into, I think the
Sorry, I'll
reason
go.
why, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, my bad. Hello, my name is Alexis Bigby. I live on the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation in Montana. I'm affiliated with the Assiniboine and Aoni tribes. I'm part of the Wetan clan, and I want to be an attorney, and my favorite Native movie is Dreamkeeper.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Anybody else? Alrighty. Well, the main reason why I like to do introductions with everyone, not just myself as a presenter, but I like to facilitate, you know, discussion around where we come from, who we are, or a little bit of our background, just because I feel like it's important that we share that information with each other. Not only does it strengthen us as an individual and sharing where we come from, which is our strengths, right? But it is, of course, a deep ingrained sense of family connection and tribal connection. But it also connects us each individually, right? So if you listen to everyone's introduction or read the introduction, you can pick up bits and pieces of maybe you're in the same state, or maybe you're from the same tribe, or you're studying similar subject areas. I think that building that sense of connection is really important. Aside from that, I think I always say this is that eventually you're going to come in contact with someone from your university or college years later on down the road, right? Whether that be a relative of this individual. I know it's hard to remember some individuals throughout your college career, but I can remember a lot of people I ran into and at different conferences, at different presentations, and I would be like, yeah, I remember that person. I remember them dancing there, or I remember that they shared this piece of information and I remember their name and their tribe. And wow, I'm seeing them like 5 years later, right? It's really interesting how we come back around to each other. So that's the purpose for this. So today's discussion, we're going to go into, you know, how do you build mental strength, basically, mental strength. And so I took this from the Calm app, but it's basically 8 different points on how you can build mental strength. And it's basically building a mindset, right? Building mental strength is building a mindset. So the growth mindset, we're going to go through that a little bit. Establishing emotional regulation skills. We'll go over what emotional regulation is briefly. I'll also give you links at the end that you can look up or Google. That'll be really helpful to create a full understanding of what I'm talking about, because we only have an hour here together and you might be a little bit more curious about what I'm talking about in terms of emotional regulation, or maybe you missed something that you really wanted to write down or jot down, and make sure to take a picture of any of these if you're interested or curious. Set realistic goals. That's really important when we're talking about changing ourselves or everyday patterns. Strengthening support system. That comes in many different shapes and forms, our support systems. But how are you strengthening your support system? I think that's really beneficial to our resiliency. And you look at our family systems, right? We have ingrained communal and familial systems that are either matrilineal or patrilineal. So you look at those different systems and how does that strengthen me as an individual? And then we're going to practice we're going to look into practicing self-compassion. What is self-compassion? And we don't use these words every day, and so kind of helping you define some of these things. Stepping out of your comfort zone, that can be really scary. I know that was scary for me going through different things like an internship or learning how to be a professional, right? And then developing a daily routine. Sorry, my words today are just jumbly. Develop a daily routine that's really beneficial for success and for overcoming different challenges in our lives. And then keeping connections strong. I think that's something that, going back to support system, is maintaining those communication, but keeping them strong and making sure that you're nurturing them. So I wanted to go into a little bit of this image. I always like to bring this image into perspective when I'm talking with individuals, because it really helps to set the tone when we're thinking about who we are as an individual, when we think about what we encompass fully, right? And so I like to use the medicine wheel, as you see here. I like to incorporate that into more of a social, ecological approach. And so I incorporate both of the two. So if you see in the middle, that's me, and I'm comprised of the intellectual, the spiritual, the physical, and the emotional part of me, right? But I also like to see the other 4 areas incorporated, and that's the social part, which is up on top, occupational, which is our jobs or our learning of how to do a job, environmental, and financial. But also what makes a part of us and assists in our daily health and our well-being is also our friendships, our mentors, our family, and our supports. So I feel like this diagram really helps to make me understand how I can continue to be healthy and well by keeping these all, in a balanced way and not going too overboard in the negative parts of some of these. And when I say negative, I mean, like, for example, if I'm living an unhealthy way financially, maybe I'm taking out loans and I'm not paying them back, right? And I have all these creditors running after me, and I'm trying to figure out how to pay this back. But that financial piece is going to affect me emotionally, right? Why can't I get this right? Why can't I do this? Why? And then it might affect me physically because I'm getting stomach aches because, I'm falling into this rut of financial hardship, right? And now I'm having to pay back all these things. So I'm running myself ragged, right? But what supports do I have? I'm reaching out to people, and my supports are really low. So I might have to figure out, how do I gain more support? So this diagram really does help me to identify, okay, this is what's happening in each one of these areas. How do I balance myself to where I'm either looking at my health and wellness, I'm creating a self-care plan, and I'm overcoming some of these hardships that I'm dealing with, right? The other perspective is, how do we do it? I'm taking the belonging, mastery, interdependence, generosity. That's usually taught through the GONA approach. So the GONA is Gathering of Native Americans, and I think some of you might have heard of it, but it's basically a healing curriculum done with communities. And so when we look at our healing process, creating that sense of belonging, if you look in this friendship, mentor, family support section, we all are a part of a family or a tribe or a clan or a classroom. We all belong in some way, shape, or form. And so it's really important to understand and build that sense of belonging. The other part of this is mastery. So when I say mastery, is basically establishing and creating a sense of knowledge, gaining that sense of knowledge, to overcome some of these hard things that we've gone through, or maybe it's historical trauma that's still, standing behind us and it's still there, and so how are we combating that? What tools do we currently have, and what are we currently gathering to fight some of these historical traumas today? Interdependence, how are we working together? Looking at my supports, my friends, my mentors, my family, my coworkers, my classmates. How are we, I want to say holding hands, but we're not actually holding hands. How am I working with them and collaborating with them to address a certain situation that I have? I think that's really important. Or how are we coming together to assist an individual who needs our help, right? And then looking at generosity. Generosity comes in, I think, two different perspectives here is how are we being generous towards others and giving back our knowledge, our education? How are we sharing that information? But also, how are we being generous to each other and showing, compassion and respect? But how are we being generous to ourselves? Because sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves, right? We can be really down on ourselves, or we can be really critical. So I'm hoping you're still with me. I know it's a lot of information, and I'll have questions at the end, I'm hoping. So we'll go to the next slide, and that is growth mindset. So the growth mindset is basically the ability and the intelligence. So that ability and intelligence can be achieved through effort is called a growth mindset. So I broke this down a little bit more. So having a mindset that your talent and your skills combined with what you've been taught, the knowledge that you've gained, and putting those two into action. So, if my growth mindset at the age of 16 might have been really small, right? But through the years and through gaining of experience and knowledge, I was able to gather more talent and more skills as I went through internships, or I went through, different jobs like program management. I was able to gain and gather more knowledge and skills. And so I was able to put those into use. So that's basically what you're doing today, right? You're going through college, you're gaining all these different skills and all this different knowledge. So that way you can put those into use in the future, and you're exerting that force by doing an action, right? So that's opposed to just being stagnant and just saying, oh, well, I got this talent and this is what I know, and I'm just going to do that every single day. But there really is no growth in terms of gaining more knowledge, gaining more skills, or expecting an action when you're not doing any action, right? So it has to involve some sort of action, exerting force. That's growth mindset. Let me go to the next one. So emotional regulation, this one is a really big one. So in order to gain mental strength, you have to have the ability to understand what emotional regulation is and how to assess each situation, right? It's part of the process. So emotional regulation is the ability to effectively manage and respond to an emotional experience. We all have emotional experiences, right? Whether they're good or bad. We tend to remember a lot of the bad. And if you have if you have very little sense of emotional regulation of like what is the situation, and you haven't had time to sit down and assess it, you might remember the bad more than the good. And so it's really important that we sit down and we look at the situations that might happen in our lives, challenges or barriers. And, you know, taking an example, a specific situation might be an argument that I had, say it's with my mom or something, someone who lives in the house. That situation might be difficult. There might be, you know, some harsh words or, you know, something happens. So how are we coping and adapting to that? And there's multiple ways that we cope and adapt. I know it's hard to sit down and assess each one of these situations if it's really difficult or if there's harm in there that's ingrained in this. It might be a really difficult thing to sit down and try to segment these, you know, segment and take apart. I would highly suggest you get some sort of like a journal. I got this off of Amazon. It's really cheap, like $10 for a pack of 3. So I go through and I use these for work, but I also use another one for my personal stuff. And so I go through and I write down, you know, maybe it's something that I'm dealing with today and I really have to get it off my chest, or like I'm feeling confused and I need to write it out. What exactly is this? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel sad today? And so we're constantly using different coping strategies and we're constantly adapting, right? Because of this specific situation. So those coping and adapting strategies can be healthy or they can be unhealthy. Some examples of healthy strategies might be going for a walk. It could be talking it out. And those are basically not going to cause us harm. The unhealthy strategies could be, you know, substance use or using some sort of outlet such as cutting, or something that's going to cause us lasting damage. Could be smoking. And I heard something on the radio today about lung cancer, which kind of triggered me just right now. That's like the number one thing in America today that's causing us a lot of harm. And so really sitting down and looking at, you know, what's causing you to have these reactions, how you're coping and adapting. So the healthy strategies are basically something that doesn't cause you harm and something that's diffusing the situation, or not the situation, diffusing your emotions. So if I'm going for a walk, I'm able to walk and I'm just able to process everything that's happening, right? And you're creating an understanding of why these emotions are happening. So I could be really down today and I'd be like, okay, let me go for a jog on the treadmill or something. Let me go to the gym real quick because I'm not feeling right. So I'm going to go jog. And I'm like, why am I feeling like this? You know, and so I might replay my day and then I might pinpoint something that I read that caused me to think about, say, my dad. And it caused me to feel this sense of anger and sadness and shame, right? But that would have to be a specific thing that happened in my life, of course. So having that ability to go and say, okay, this is what happened, and this is what triggered me, and this is how I reacted. Those unhealthy strategies that you have can cause, of course, lasting damage, but also it can cause unanticipated damage, right? So if I'm a cutter or if I'm thinking of suicide, which if you are having hopeless thoughts or thoughts of suicide, please call 988. This is a good plug that if you're feeling any of these type of emotions or thoughts, that it's always good to reach out to someone. If you need to reach out to your coach, if you need to reach out to a professor, a friend, somebody, or call 988 or go to your nearest urgent care facility or behavioral health facility to get some help, because I know times can get tough. I've dealt with certain thoughts like that, and I had to say, you know what, that's not who I am or what I'm doing, and let me go call up so and so because this is weird that I'm thinking about this. Kind of just talk through it, right? And it's only natural that we have those thoughts. But I need you to understand that there is help out there and you're not alone. And you're not the only one that's thinking about, suicide when it comes to that point. So pick up that phone and, talk it out. So things like unhealthy strategies, substance use, say drinking, if we're developing those unhealthy patterns and we're constantly going into situation, and then we go to unhealthy strategies, drinking, and then we go to shame, we go to regret, we go to back to the same thing because we're not addressing it, right? We're going back to feeling that same feeling of shame or guilt or inadequacy, right? And it keeps going and going, and you're just continuing that cycle again and again. And so that in itself can have unhealthy consequences, but also inadvertently having consequences, right? So as a result, take apart each area or each type of situation. So I start up here. I'm going to the store and I'm going to buy beer, right? Well, how much money am I spending on that? Am I spending $5? Am I spending $150, right? Because I went to the bar. That can cause a lot of financial stress. But later on down the road, I'm doing this cycle at least 20 times in a month. What does my liver look like? How is it affecting my liver? How's it affecting my brain? Because you know that alcohol, of course, it causes your brain cells to die off. It causes your liver to function a little bit harder than usual, as well as your heart. And so you're causing harm in an indirect way. Not to mention if you end up in some sort of, say you tripped and fell and you hit your elbow and you hit your head, like what is that going to cause, right? So kind of going through and thinking about, okay, maybe that was a dumb thing to do. I shouldn't have done that. Let me rework, and how do I change my strategies? Is it reaching out to someone, my support, and saying, hey, I did a really dumb thing yesterday and I went out and I went to the bar and I got drunk, and can you kind of help me out and help me walk through these? Or is it a counselor you're reaching out to and saying, can you help me out because this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm seeing? And it's really important that we have some sort of support to help us through some of these thoughts, right? And so that's part of creating that mental strength in each one of us. Let me get to the right. Okay. So these are some of the questions that were provided, and I'll put the link at the end. Is how do we break the cycle, right? We're identifying emotions and thoughts. And so if you can think of a specific situation, don't make it too big, just kind of like a light situation. Say, I don't know, I got in an argument with my daughter, right? And then after that, I felt bad because of something that was brought up, and it triggered me to think about when my mom said the same thing to me, right? So what specific thoughts trigger the most negative emotions for me? So sitting down and maybe thinking about this a little bit, or maybe just kind of briefly tagging those in your mind. What specific thoughts trigger the most negative emotions for me? So it could be thoughts of shame. That always brings up some really negative emotions for me, and thoughts of grief. That really hits me hard, right? So I'm writing these down. Which emotions are hardest for me to tolerate? Is it anger? Do I get really angry? And is that something that's really something I need to address? Which emotions are easiest for me to tolerate? Is it sadness? Am I able to, like, okay, I feel sad, I'm gonna bounce back? What behaviors do I tend to use to calm down the feelings? So they could be healthy or unhealthy, right? They could be positive or negative. Write those down. What behaviors do I tend to use to calm down the feelings? I usually go for a walk. I usually have to pause and think about it. I have to really, really sit down and think about it. And I'm like, you know, that take at least 30 minutes to really process and go through why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, or, you know, what caused that feeling. And that's okay. How well do these work in the short and long term? Are these really helping you out? Do you need to change some things up? Do I want to use these behaviors? What are the underlying beliefs about myself, others, or life in general that tend to most strongly perpetuate the negative cycles? And when I was going through that negative cycle, um, what are your beliefs during those times? Is it having those doubts of, like, I can't do this? I'm so, I don't know, I don't want to use the words, but are they negative thoughts that you're telling yourself? That's really important to start to jot down. Um, on writing down the date and just kind of going through what your day looked like and really noticing where you have those negative thoughts. Really understanding, while I got this 73% on this quiz and I thought I was going to do really well, and I was just feeling really down on myself and calling myself, names. And so writing that down, understanding that. And I'll go into a little bit more of what you can do instead. Conversely, what thoughts and beliefs do I have that assist me most in generating positive feelings? So on the flip side, this is exactly what I was talking about. After I got that 73% on my quiz, I was getting really down on myself, but I also have the ability to change my mindset, right? I can flip it to the positive and thinking, man, okay, now I know that maybe I'm not really connecting with this piece in psychology, and I really need to brush up on these different cognitive, whatever you call them, I don't know, beliefs that I'm just kind of not getting, right? So I can go in and ask my professor, like, hey, I'm not getting this part. And it can really help you to develop that sense of positive perspective and saying, okay, I have the ability. Let me go talk to my professor, and maybe I can retake or do some extra credit and write an essay on, what are the different psychological. I don't know what, I'm just kind of making up stuff, but you can go in and take a positive stance at some of your negative events or barriers or challenges. Setting realistic goals. So I think sometimes we set our standards way up here, and that, yes, that's really easy to do, but really setting those realistic goals. And I think some of that really entails the diagram that I showed you in the beginning. I was talking about something simple, as, taking a walk. How does that impact me in all those different areas? Making sure that it's a SMART goal, right? Making sure that it's realistic, making sure that it's attainable. What was the S? What was the S? I just had it. SMART, measurable, attainable, timely, realistic. I forget the S. Making sure that it's small and bite size. So that way it's not this gigantic thing like I'm gonna run 3 miles every morning. You have to have it small and bite sized, right? I'm gonna take a 15-minute walk on my break. I'm gonna set my timer on my phone, 15 minutes. I'm gonna walk out wherever I can for 7 minutes, and then I'm gonna turn around and come back, right? And that's something that I can do easily on my break, on in between meetings. Okay, I have 15 minutes. I can go walk, or in between classes. Okay, now's my time. I'm gonna go sit and meditate for 15 minutes and clear my mind, right? So this kind of goes into taking care of your physical needs, like we all do. You know, we get emotions and thoughts, and they can cloud what we're doing. So it's really important that we take the time to make sure that we're meeting our physical needs. We're eating nutritiously. We're eating healthy, and we're taking in good foods. We're taking in our water. We're taking in positive thoughts and positive things that are on social media or the news or YouTube or whatever. Because that can kind of feed into that negative perspective that sometimes plays in our mind. But also we're doing some physical fitness, right? We're maintaining our physical fitness. What does that look like? Is it walking? Is it running? Is it yoga? Is it Pilates? Is it playing basketball? Is it playing volleyball? You know, getting with a group of friends and going out and doing what you like to do. Making sure that you're setting those realistic goals in terms of meeting your physical needs, but also engaging in activities that build a sense of achievement. Is it getting together with a group of friends and saying, hey, let's go out for a walk. I'll meet you at, over here we call a park, Buffalo Park. I'll meet you at Buffalo Park at 5:30, and we can, you know, go walk around the small loop and kind of just decompress our day, but also we're taking a walk, right? And we're working our physical needs. Changing thoughts is easier than changing feelings. So again, going through those positive and negative discussion of what I just said earlier, and how the negative feeds into that shame and that hopelessness and that depression and all that, those bad things, right? Changing your mindset to a more positive approach can help you to have and strengthen your growth mindset, right? So next up, we'll go into support system. Again, I said this in the beginning, and not only strengthening your support system, but also keeping connections strong. If you could go back to, let me go back to that diagram here. Go back to this diagram if you want to write this diagram out on a piece of paper. I always like to do this mentally. I'm thinking about, you know, some of these supports with friends, mentors, family support. Write out some of the people that you would contact or that you can contact to start building up your supports or to start strengthening. Like, say I have a friend that, you know, I every now and then I'll talk to her, but I don't really make the effort too much. Just kind of when she wants to talk, but maybe making that effort to strengthen that friendship a little bit more might be helpful to me in the future, and maintaining that friendship. If that person, someone who I want to see in my life and who's a positive influence, that's helpful. Mentors, maybe you have someone at the college who, or in the community, who's a really big I want to say like advocate, or like a everyone looks towards. Maybe that's strengthening a relationship with that person if it's a healthy and appropriate way. talking to that person and saying, how you, talking about your career or whatever approach you want to take it, and seeing them as a mentor and understanding your role as a mentee and having them understand their role as a mentor. That's really important. It could be family, it could be auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa. Maybe there's somebody that you need to strengthen that relationship with a little bit more, who's been there for you, but maybe you just don't have the time. And then other supports, is it, again, like I said, professor, coworker, a colleague, etc. So strengthening and keeping connection strong, that's really, really important. Time is flying so fast. Okay. Self-compassion. So this is really important, having self-compassion when dealing with different difficult times, because our mind oftentimes goes to the bad when we're dealing with something. I know my mind does that really quickly. Oh no, what's going to happen? Oh no, you could think of the unknown. But self-compassion is basically extending compassion to oneself in instances of perceived inadequacy, failure, or general suffering. So, like I was talking about the test, maybe you didn't get the grade that you wanted to, or maybe it's a class. I failed some classes when I was going through college, and I was really down on myself and thinking, this is it. You go into that like giant lake of despair, and well, I'll just go to work and I'll just do this from now on, right? But I think after some time thinking and, like, wait, you know what? You really can make a difference. It's okay that you failed this one class. Try it again, you know? So kind of think about, how do you provide self-compassion to yourself? Talking to yourself in a good way, is it positive? Um, Having that mindset that, there's another chance, that there is another way to do it. Maybe there's a different way that will work for you, and not following a Western perspective, or something that you didn't want. Maybe it's looking at how you want to do things. So really having that self-compassion and saying, you know what, okay, I'm going to try this again and it'll be okay. And I'm going to move forward and I'm going to do it in a good way, right? So think about that. How do you do this? Is it patting yourself on the back every time you do good? Good job, you did it. Or saying, you know what, I did a lot today. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to relax and I'm going to watch, a good movie, and or I'm going to sit down and read my book, right? Those are all good ways to reward yourself. Let me go to the next one. Stepping out of your comfort zone really is an interesting concept. It's really taking that healthy risk, because sometimes we can be uneasy. It could be feeling really weird, right? I remember, just walking into a classroom and being like, oh my God, everyone's going to stare at me, even though nobody was staring at me, right? You're sitting in your desk and you're like, oh my God, my stomach's rumbling, and what are they thinking about me? And, like you're all these thoughts are going in your mind. But really taking that healthy risk to be present, sitting in that classroom, that might be stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit, especially if it's at a non-native school and everyone else around you is not from your background, or maybe you're coming off the reservation, you're going to a city school, and that might be a big change. And having that ability to step out of your comfort zone, maybe you're afraid of public speaking and you jump into a club and you're doing speeches every other meeting, that could be a little challenging, it could be a little uneasy, but you're actually taking a healthy risk to improve something that you've been struggling with, right? Another thing is just talking about it. I know that mental health gets a really bad perception out in Indian country, and it oftentimes like, what's the point of that? You must be crazy if you're going to see a counselor, or you must be, um, something must be wrong with you if you're going to the behavioral health counseling center, right? So there's a lot of negative connotations associated with mental health, but it could really help you taking a healthy risk and going out and talking with a counselor and saying, you know what, this is what I'm dealing with, and realizing that you're not the only one who's dealing with this, and maybe talking it out is a good thing. Talking about my grief, talking about my trauma, talking about some of these anxieties that I might have that come up on a daily basis. So that's really important to understand and be aware of taking a healthy risk. Developing a daily routine. What does that look like for you? So this is a really good self-assessment to go through and think about, what does my daily routine look like? Maybe it's putting it in a little table and putting it like morning, afternoon, evening, right? Something as simple as that. And writing out, what do you do in the morning? Maybe a couple of things you do in the morning, or in the afternoon or the evening, right? What does that daily routine look like for you? Or it could be really in depth, and it could be like in 30-minute increments, and your day could just be like from 8 to 9, like 5, 6 to 8, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, or it could be a little more in detail. I know when I was working in the office, and I have kids, and I have like practices, and I have like dance class, PTO meetings, and you have board meetings, and you have fundraisers, you have all these things, right? And so going through your day and writing out your routine and making sure that your routine is really solid in the morning or really solid in the evening, that really is helpful for creating that specific mindset that you want to create. Because if it's cluttery, yeah, sometimes I get cluttery and messy. It could really just throw off everything in your day. Just your mind is so cluttery that you can't get nothing done. Or if your space is dirty, right? So every evening I'm writing down, clear out my space, put away my, when I'm done with work, all my stuff, prep for tomorrow, right? So what is your daily routine? I know we're coming up to the end of the hour, but bear with me a few more minutes. And then self-care. What is self-care? Is basically taking the time to look at how you're creating a sense of wellness and a sense of a healthy life for yourself, right? What are you doing to work on maintaining your health in all these different spheres? Socially, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, physically, environmentally, financially, occupationally. What are you doing in each one of these areas? So think about that. I know I'm just running through this now. And then another question is, how do you practice self-care to manage stress during your time in college? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it going to help you in the long run? These are really questions to ask yourself. Because a lot of the times we don't have time to ask ourselves, right? A lot of times we just kind of brush over it and think like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm getting it done. But really be intentional with your thoughts and your time instead of scrolling TikTok, which can be great, right? But really taking the time to be like, yeah, doing this wrong. I need something different. It's not working for me. And then basically reminding ourselves that we are strong and resilient people, right? We've come from so much. We've overcome a lot of things in our lives historically, as well as present day. Really, we're still dealing with some of those things. And so identifying, what your elders taught you and what your parents taught you in terms of resiliency and overcoming things. Think about that for a minute. And how was that shown to you? Because there's so many examples that I can think of right now, like grandfathers, grandmothers, even if I didn't know them. I didn't know my grandmother, and, I'm just hearing about some of the things that she did. And she was, you know, 9 months pregnant. The very day she gave birth, she was out there chopping wood, right? So that shows me how strong and how resilient she was to keep going and making sure that her family was warm and that she was getting things done, right? And she wasn't just um, waiting for someone to bring her wood, right? So those are kind of examples of how am I being how what was taught to me to be strong and resilient. So sometimes it's ingrained within us and we don't even know it, right? And so having that understanding and what makes you strong and what were you taught? Is prayer, ceremony? Is it stories? Is it stories from your family? Is it your name, your last name, the name you were given? Um, there's many, many different instances. Or maybe your clan animal. What kind of strengths do they carry, and what do you see that within yourself? So take the time to think about that. I know we're coming up to the end of the hour. The resources, if you want to take a picture of this, talking about emotional regulation, the information is there. Growth mindset, a book called You Happier, which has a lot of good information. If you can check it out on Amazon or whatnot. Self-care plan goes into more detail. You can find this on this website. And then doing what matters in time of stress. It's a whole big booklet that you can read through. It's like 80 pages. It has like illustrations. It's awesome. I love it. I love anything that has illustrations. But it's really helpful though. Check it out. Take a picture of this resource list. And then I would like to say thank you for joining me. I'm going to put the survey link inside oops, the chat. I know it was really quick. It was so quick. Everything just seems to be flying by so quickly. If you can take the time to fill out the survey, please do that. If you have any questions for me, I'll try to answer them. I know our time is limited. I don't want to go too far over your time because I know you have stuff to do and maybe you have to eat or study or get to the kids and whatnot or family. Please take the survey. It provides us with a lot of information on what we need to do or what you want to see in the future. But otherwise, thank you for joining me tonight. I hope I said and provided you with some information that'll help you in the future, because we all want you to succeed and we want you to do well in your classes and your career. And so, again, thank you for being here. I'll be on for another 2 minutes or until you all leave the room. Let me stop sharing my screen. And let me look at the chat. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you. Have a good evening, you all. Take the survey.